very broad topic, but kind of encapsulates the 5 categories that we discuss and how we actually build communities around those projects and initiatives. So the question here is, for any contributor, how do your goals overlap with our evolutionary purpose? We have the stated purpose to create universal and fair access to decentralized assets. How might our purpose evolve and really, expand into the growing community? What problems does the Aptos community solve? What are we actually providing to Aptos? I think learning together summarizes what we do, and kind of like, knowledge. These are kind of flipped around as opportunities, not necessarily thought of as problems, but we can just boil it down to 3 things: engagement, advocacy, and coordination. And bottom line here is we help contributors find opportunities to collaborate, alluding to what Daniel shared earlier. And then one of the level set on platforms, we have a lot of different places where you can be part of the community, or you can participate and interact with fellow members. We're using Orbit, which is an open source model for evaluating contributions across platforms. And we have 2 main weekly activations for the community: Move Mondays and this workshop every Wednesday. I just also wanted to call out that we do have, a forum that we're launching, and that will be really helpful to connect all of the different work streams and the projects we're talking about. The coordination factor is key. The forum is crucial for success there. And then a few more guiding questions with brief answers, just to get the thoughts flowing before the workshop. What should people know about Aptos? I think this would be an ongoing question for Aptos Academy, and everyone is welcome to participate in developing that content. We definitely have a lot of emphasis on learning first and wanting to learn together. And through learning, you can find ways to improve content for accessibility. And that's why we're building a community-driven knowledge base, because that's how it actually sustains itself and organizes itself. So we will start with efforts on the forum, including the proposal that Stefan mentioned, and build towards what is now being referred to as Aptos Academy. Work in progress, title is not yet finalized, branding is not yet finalized, nothing is for Aptos Academy. It's a common goal that we have. And how might you get more involved as a coordinator? What does a coordinator actually do? Driving forward projects, initiatives, and you can get grants for these projects. There are 2 categories of grants. You might have seen our blog post earlier today. Relevant categories include education, first and foremost, but also open source and public goods. I think that's a very broad category that we can define together and identify what we're building as an open source community platform, for example, or even just the documentation and resources that are in development. And then finally, this kind of leads into the workshop. It's about improving understanding of these practices of community facilitation to help contributors learn and develop Aptos together. So we're learning to develop and grow together as a community. And how do we improve understanding of the practices we use to get there? And the answer is participatory action research or generative action research. And we'll start with this workshop and lead to a research design document. And that'll be hopefully an outcome of this today. So I'll stop there in the interest of time, but we can dive into anything in this slideshow later on. But that should do it for me. And if you want to jump in now, George, and explain how we're going to address the questions and new questions to ask ourselves and anything else you'd like to share.
Okay. Thanks, James, for the invitation. Do you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes,
Okay, good.
we can hear you.
Yes,
So
yes.
I want to start with just saying a few words about myself. I've been a designer and facilitator of virtual communities since 1982. So people consider me as one of the pioneers of online communities. I'm also a semi-retired academic researcher with past positions in UC Berkeley, London School of Economics, and other places. The specialty, the focus of my research is collective intelligence and communities of practice and knowledge ecology. I'm the founder of Future Hall, which is a research institute for regenerative futures. And I'm a member of a few DAOs, including the Iron DAO and the DAO Influencers Collective. I developed the Generative Action Research Framework, which is an upgrade to the better known participatory action research. You guys will hear about that more later. So that's about me. And you can ask any questions as I'm going to talk a little bit about the generative action research. You can put it in the chat notes if you want. I don't promise that I'm going to respond to all the questions right now during my presentation, but I certainly will make a copy from the chat notes and will get back to you afterwards. So regarding the generative action research, why do we need one? Why do we need community facilitation research? Well, my answer to that fundamental question is that the purpose, as we envision, is building greater capacity for community facilitation in the Aptos ecosystem. And the interesting thing to know about generative action research, how it differs from more traditional academic research. The main difference is that in generative action research, we roll the learn, build, and evolve processes into one. So that means that the learning and the creating new capabilities, evolving, do not appear at the end after the research. Like we are not going to go away, present a research paper, and then share it with you and you can learn from it. No, it's participatory. So interested community members can participate in the research, and in the very process of the generative action research, we are generating new capabilities and, of course, learning and evolving through that. So we envision this research project that it would be one of the educational initiatives related to community development. And we would like to synergize it with the Aptos Academy initiatives. Ideally, it could become, this generative research project could become a seed for the Aptos Academy Research Institute. I'm just saying from the top of my head, I have not yet had a chance to discuss this with James and my colleagues. It just came to my mind as I heard about the Aptos Academy, because I feel that the research and the proper educational function would go hand in hand. The outcomes from the research for the individuals is, of course, help you get up to speed with your vision, and the impact of the research for Aptos as a business, that's, well, the impact is, to be jointly developed, jointly defined by the Joint Action Research Team that would be comprised a few experts from our side and interested community members who want to participate actively in the research. So what kind of research questions? For example, I say for example, because that also to be defined together, but just to give you a sense, like a research question that interests me very much is what inspires love in the community? Love in the sense of the orbit model, where it is a measure of the members' level of involvement in the community. What another question, what practices help members move from the level of exploring to participating to contributing and eventually to leading? In a broader sense, what are the best practices in managing and facilitating communities, and what are the capabilities that Aptos coordinators and community managers and facilitators would need to develop to increase the rate of uptaking, receiving, and enacting those best practices. So generative action research has a couple of process principles. I'm not going to go into all the details, but just of the process principles. So generative action research, or GAR, is participative. Participative means that the participants are becoming co-researchers as key stakeholders of the research project. They are actively involved in advising the process, assessing its evolving purpose and design, and shaping its outcomes. So that's one. The other process principle is that the action research projects go through a spiraling four-stage process of reflecting, planning, acting, and observing. Let me share a slide with you. So can you guys see my slide?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what you see here, it shows the spiraling nature that from cycle one, we can start anywhere, like starting with reflection, moving into planning, acting, observing, and back to reflection for the next cycle, cycle two. And again, the same pattern repeats and moving into cycle three. You can see also that these cycles are represented with circles of increasing size. That means increasing number of participants who are getting involved, increasing number of research questions. And presently, I would say that we are in cycle zero. So if you can imagine a smaller circle in front of cycle one, because cycle one is when we officially launch the research project, when it's approved and supported. Presently, we are in cycle zero, that we started with reflection among ourselves with Danielle and James, then planning for for our participation in this workshop, moving into action, which is actually participating, talking with you guys, and then observing what are we learning from it. And if everything goes well, then we move into, from cycle 0, we move into cycle 1. So besides that, another process characteristic, the third process principle, it was participative, cyclic, and the third is emergent. So that means the design of a generative action project is not detailed in advance. It cannot be, because to allow the next cycles of the research to respond to relevant knowledge, new challenges and opportunities emerge from the previous cycle, it's better to not to create like an architectural design for the whole GAR process. So how would we move forward? Well, I would say that we would start with forming a joint action research team of experts and committed community members, and using some time within the workshop one-day series, if the community find this process resonant and useful to the overall educational purpose of the Aptos ecosystems. And in cycle 1, we would also build on the orbit model, for example, the activity types. We would add a valuable activity type, such as seeding, feeding, excuse me, seeding, feeling, and weeding, the community knowledge garden, which is essential to increase the community's collective intelligence and impact. That's the ultimate purpose of the action research project. We would conduct generative one-on-one conversations with the team members, and then we would convene the first workshop of cycle 1, which would be an orientation, scoping, and design workshops. And finally, those of you who consider or interested in becoming co-researchers, you would need to look up some resources that I am putting a link to in the chat, so you can look it up afterwards. And one more. Yeah, and besides that, those who want to commit to participate, you would be also invited to an online working conversation in a Discord thread or a forum dedicated to it. And well, that's all really what I wanted to say. And I will be happy to answer questions when we get to that into that phase of this workshop Wednesday.
Thank you. Very helpful, and I'm sure we will be following up. My vision for this, zooming out based on what you and Daniel shared, I'd like to link to this blog post in the chat. Many of you might have seen this already, but it's about our approach to research, and makes me think about how Aptos ecosystem success aligning with curiosity and exploration into all kinds of research fields, outside of our expertise, where the world-class engineering meets the engineering, the research that leads to developments. So we have a clear overlap and alignment, I'd say, with what our Endow is trying to do, with potentially unique approach that might be improved with a broader focus on all kinds of subjects. And community is really important for success. We know that, and understanding our practices feels like a tangible outcome that we are building toward in these workshops. And so my vision would be to carve out some of these workshops, if not, convert the whole workshop strategy to, feed into this research project. And it's hopefully clear how, participatory or generative action research, especially generative action research, builds on itself and grows. And that means including more and more participants in these workshops and the overall research. So I'd hope to figure out a way to structure that in a format of the Workshop Wednesday event series. Maybe it's 5 minutes at the end, we do a reflection, or we could do a monthly cadence where we spend half the call every week doing the research part of it, and 1 week is reflection, next week is planning, then acting, then observing, or maybe we can iterate faster and do a bunch of that in every week. I think that's probably more likely and more realistic, to see what we might do in the next 20 minutes. As an example, I was thinking, it's what we focused on for the initial workshops about, I think it was a month and a half. We asked the question, how might we improve community experience? Because our community was very nascent and we had a lot of room for improvement, and we wanted to identify problems that were low effort and high impact. So building on that, we started to develop this contributor program, which is kind of like an ambassador program. And we have this role of coordinators who are crucial, and they are a select group that drives forward projects, as we've discussed today. And I think of coordinators as community facilitators, and that's a general position. I think moderators and myself are also community facilitators, and we want to build capacity, like George said, for that capability, for that skill, I guess it would be one way to put it, but I think it's more holistically, it's just a way of being. It's kind of like how you're interacting with the community to facilitate sustainable growth and development, and evolution. So the idea of this research could be really helpful to the workshop structure, and we can focus, instead of going into the broader questions about community. I think for the next 50 minutes, let's try to either pick one of the 4 steps and go down that route in the context of Aptos Academy. So we can use Aptos Academy in the month of July if we want to reflect on what Stefan shared and really delve into it further. I think that would be a great direction. But if we wanted to start planning, that's great. I know there's been a lot of planning already, so we can hear from anybody who wants to share feedback, in the observation kind of phase, or we could, just make sure to get back into the action and writing or looking at some resources. Maybe there's a documentation workshop that we do in the future as a more action-oriented workshop. Just throwing out ideas. I'll stop there, and hopefully somebody has been waiting to speak. I think I saw somebody mention in the chat that they wanted to speak. Sergey, did you have something to add? Sorry if it's out of context now.
Yeah, hello. Did you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm really glad to see you on this workshop. Thank you for this. Yeah, I need to meet you with my company, Fox Hustle team of enthusiasts. So we have a lot of programmers, artists, translators. For example, I think we have all ambassadors who can be ambassadors. So first of product, what we do, we create a social network, but after this, we create great bots on social networks, on Discord, Telegram, and any. And we help projects to make experience with communicate with community and community experience more simple and interesting. For example, we can create a bot who gamificated communication on chats and create content. So how can we visualize it? A bot who collects experience when people speak on chats, when people chatting on chats, yeah, and when they do something interesting, create content. Maybe they make arts. So we can generate promo codes for experience, more experience than people can collect when they only speak on the chats, and we can take it for the people. So after months or any time, we can see who make how many hold of context or any who make something for the project. Yeah, and this is very interesting.
Let me just interject here, because I want to mention that we have our bot in the Discord, and you might have noticed the community platform, which requires Discord as a login for now. We also have the forum, and I'm curious maybe if there's a more tangible way to apply what you're sharing in the workshop context for this purpose of maybe planning educational initiatives within the context of this Aptos Academy project. How can we leverage Discord, automations, and experiences to facilitate community learning experiences? Like overall, how do we facilitate learning with bots? And maybe that's the first step, is just identifying that goal, and then we can hear from you if you have experience with that.
Okay, I understand you. So if we speak about classic bots on Discord who see that people are chatting, this bots is only bots, it's only program. But if you see maybe art on the chat who creates to the project, and you like this art, you can like it, only like. But if you have this bot, you can tag this bot that this content is great, and the bot understand it and know it. So after any time, you can know how many people and who make content for the project. So I think that it's great, and it can help to create something events and take it. So if we have
interesting, I don't know if it relates to education per se, but I think we should continue looking into ideas like that. My feeling is it's extra work. Always avoiding those kind of like extra work scenarios where somebody has to go through another hoop, jumping through another step in the process of getting something, and there's not really any like tangible incentives there anyway. So it's kind of like a question that would be more interesting, if that were part of the discussion, I guess. But I see a hand raised. George, what do you think?
Who would want to help us thinking together that this of the best practices in community facilitation action research and eventually participate in it, please drop me a line, and I'm just putting my email in the chat, and I will get back to you shortly.
Okay.
Nice. So if you're interested, participating in these workshops would be a great way to contribute, I think, and we will discuss ways to improve the workshops and, efforts to achieve goals in the research design document, the learning objectives, the research questions that George shared, I think are very much aligned with what we want to better understand. So I'd envision something where it could start with clear focus on Aptos community practices, then expand into general community practices, and workshop Wednesdays being one case study, one example of the generative action research in action. So yeah, I want to get back just briefly to the bot comment. We can discuss offline. I feel like it's secondary issue at this point. So I don't see it as a priority to introduce a new bot, but if anybody disagrees, let me know.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So if you need animation avatar or any, we can do it too. So it's not only first one product.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I appreciate you jumping in there. I saw, somebody tagged you, thought it was a good fit. I think it's interesting, and, you help me understand better exactly what is provided, the idea of not just reacting with an emoji, that's helpful. So we can think about how to gather contributions in a more processed format.
So, okay, if I understand correct, so I need to propose all my idea, or it's not important now?
Right, it's sort of tangential, and I want to maybe offer the floor to Stefan. If you have any next steps or requests, how can we help you? I guess you have this proposal you'll be sharing in the next few days, and I'd love to get more discussion about the proposal and really turn it into the best reflection of the community proposal for this educational initiative. And then similarly, we had great insights and perspectives from RNDAO, and Future How is kind of the link George shared to learn more about the methodology. And if you want to get involved with that research in a more committed fashion, then you can reach out directly. And I think what we'll hope to do is integrate some of the required participation, or the generative action research components in these workshops to actually understand the practices from the community itself, ourselves, rather than just look at it from an academic perspective. We want to surface those best practices from practitioners, and that includes everyone here. And I think everyone really is part of a community, so there's all kinds of community practices, and we can explore and figure out what is the best question to ask. But I started with those 3 questions, in addition to the ones I answered in more detail. But what do people need to know about Aptos? What should people know? What should people learn? These are questions for the coordinators working in our education category and applying for grants, building resources. The challenge there is we don't want 100 different educational platforms, right? I mean, it'd be great to have some variety. I think that's cool. We can have several. We don't have to all coordinate around the same Aptos Academy, but I think it's helpful to unify our community-driven efforts in one direction. So if you feel like you can do it better yourself, by all means, submit for a grant But I think what we'll find is the approach Stefan has taken and will be taking, if the proposal is approved, represents the most sustainable and I think it's worth mentioning the generative capabilities, right? It's about building a generative structure with processes to evolve, and that means self-sustainability, self-propagation, self-improvement, and then that self-evolution concept. And then if we can manage to do that by nature as part of the regenerative culture of Aptos, then I think we're in a good place. We'll aim for that, and how we get there is making sure the community is healthy and resilient. So we're not just operating with the spikes driving our objectives. The other way around. We want the objectives to be the first consideration. But yeah, I'm rambling now. Sorry, Stefan, do you want to jump in the last few minutes here and invite others to contribute? We could also finish off if others have any requests, or after Stefan speaks, we can discuss further.
Yeah, absolutely. So James, you've asked about the next steps. I think the next step would be to finalize the proposal, which is going to act as the foundation, and then to publish it to the community and basically get the community's feedback on the proposal, because I've just built the foundation, laid out the groundwork, but it's really important to me to get the feedback, the ideas from the entire community, and to get everybody involved in this project, and to basically imagine how the Aptos Academy could look like, which I'm really excited about, to hear everybody's feedback and input into that. And once we have done that, we can also, I think, conduct a brainstorming sessions in which we basically dream up the academy, how it could look like, how it should look like, what it could do in the future. And once we have done all that, I think we can take all this input from the community, work it into the proposal, make a really good community-driven proposal, a community proposal where we basically approach Aptos and propose this new project, the Aptos Academy. So I think these are the next steps. And yeah, I'm working hard to get the proposal finished and published. And once that's done, I'm really happy to hear everybody's feedback on the proposal and to work that into the proposal and to co-create basically the Aptos Academy with everybody in here.
Sounds like a plan. And yeah, I mean, I think in the process of getting to this point, we've really learned about the importance of reflection. So I think education is always important for us to remember as the North Star. I say, the guiding question of, how can we help anyone learn about Aptos, or, learn, build, and evolve as the objectives, really. But it starts with learn, and we're always learning. And I can't wait to see what we learn next with our community in this project. I think it'll be a really unique opportunity for everyone. Any other last minute comments? I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you very much to George and Daniel for jumping in, sharing from their sides of the world. And Stefan, thanks very much for all your great work. Thanks, Sergey, for some questions that were interesting to consider, and others who spoke up. Any other thoughts?
Thank you very much for the invite. Excited for what's to come.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thanks for being here. Hope everyone has a good rest of the day. Peace.
Bye.